More on what's really happening in the housing market. We welcome Bob Wahlberg. He runs Chartwell Asset Management. And we have Danielle Rabb, author of Finding Foreclosures, an insider's guide to cashing in on this hidden market. So the question that I have, Danielle, first of all, is that what Hank Paulson was saying is that it's not just the subprimes. There are going to be foreclosures all over the place. Yeah. Is that something people could be taking advantage of right now?
It is something people can be taking advantage of. But one thing that we're really seeing is buyers are asking, where is the bottom of this market? And I think a lot of them are very confused as to when to actually buy, especially in case.
Well, when do we do it? Do we do it now or do we wait a year?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, when we look at inventory of new homes and resale homes, new homes tend to be about 6 months ahead of resale homes in terms of inventory numbers. Those are actually lower than the resale homes for the first time in a while, 8 months versus 10 months. So if we look at that indicator, that would mean that around 6 months from now, we should start seeing inventory levels of resale homes to drop off. Let me just put a fine point on that. New homes are now cheaper relatively than the older homes. Home builders are much more willing to take a cut right now and to get it off the books than someone who owns their home.
But you know, existing home sales make up the bulk, Danielle, of sales across the country. New home sales are a very small percentage. So I think that people might be a little misled by the fact that new homes are a better deal.
Well, they're not necessarily always a better deal, but we do know that their inventories fall more rapidly than that of new homes or of existing homes. So therefore, the price would tend to fall much more quickly than resale homes.
All right. So, Bob, where do we go from here? I mean, some people I've talked to say, you know, it's going to be another 12 months, 18 months before it's even reasonable to buy a house. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think you're actually looking at the far end of that number. I think you're probably 18 months to 24 months before the housing sector bottoms. When this first started to turn about a year and a half ago, the National Association of Realtors and a bunch of other people in the industry were all suggesting that it was going to be a short-term problem. Clearly, inventory remains very high. Prices continue to come down, but sellers have yet to capitulate. Until that happens, I think you're going to see, you know, again, just a gradual, steady decline in the housing market. We'll continue to set records in terms of foreclosures and so on, numbers we haven't seen in a very long time. This is a situation that's not going to unfold quickly. Again, probably 18 months, 24 months before we see a bottom in housing.
So, Bob, you say that sellers are not capitulating. They're not willing to sell at a deep discount. How far do you think they're going to have to lower their expectations in percentage points in order to sell property a year from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably, you know, a little unknown at this point, but I would suggest, at least in this area, that in the Chicagoland area, the Midwest, you're looking at probably another 20 to 25% below current prices before people are going to get those down.
That's what's interesting, Danielle.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at what builders are cutting, they're cutting between 10 and 30%. So why wouldn't resale homeowners have to do the same thing to sell their home?
Why do you think people are holding on so much to the value of their home? I mean, you're not seeing this fire sale yet, even after all the bad news we've had over the summer about the housing industry.
I think it's an emotional attachment. People don't want to believe that their home, something they've invested in, that they've raised their children in, that they're going to leave, is worth less than it was a year ago. People have a really hard time walking away from what they see as a $50,000 loss rather than the gain that they have in equity. They look at the loss over last year.
Bob, is speculation now in housing at an end and completely?
Yes, the speculative bubble that took place. I mean, the speculators have been out of the market for at least 6 months now, so they're pretty much out. And you know, that was one of the last factors which really accelerated price increases. But going to the earlier point, I think one of the reasons you aren't seeing sellers capitulate yet is it's only been about a year or so since people saw prices going up dramatically, and they just haven't adjusted to the new reality. And I think it's taking
certainly the
longer
TV shows on that we watch about how to resell very quickly. They're out of date. Dani and Bob, thank you very much. Appreciate you both being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's take a look at who made money today. Apple getting ready to roll